Hi, everyone. My name is Chloe Corcoran, and I am the Director of Alumni Relations here at Palo Alto University. Happy Pride Month. I'm very happy that it's June and we're heading into an exciting time. We are here today to have a conversation about what it's like to be a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, what it means to be visible, what it means to be visible, what we can expect or hope to see in the future, ways to keep ourselves healthy, and what can allies do to better support the community at large. And I am so excited to be joined by one of our remarkable alumni today, Dr. Nick Grant. And just to give you some context for the conversation, as we talked a little bit about visibility, I was recently cast in a show called Being Trans, first of its kind audio reality series. Some people call it a podcast. And they followed me and some other trans people around for about 4 to 5 months to get a look into the lives of trans people living in LA. So people are also sometimes surprised to find out that I played 4 years of varsity football at the University of Rochester before being an assistant coach for a little while too. And I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Nick Grant because he has quite an extensive bio. And I'm going to ask that you check him out on LinkedIn because I don't have the ability to list all of his amazing accomplishments. But Lieutenant Nick Grant, PhD, ABPP, is a naval officer and a clinical psychologist currently stationed at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, where he serves as the embedded mental health officer for Commander, Naval Surface Group, Middle Pacific. In addition to this work, Nick also currently serves as the president of GLMA, Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ plus Equality, a national LGBTQ plus health-focused nonprofit. Now, Nick's been engaged with the community for over 15 years, including serving as chair of the APA writing group that revised the resolution on opposing discriminatory laws, policies, and practices aimed at LGBTQ plus persons, and serving as an appointed member of the Washington, D.C. Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Affairs Advisory Committee. That's a lot. So, Nick, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Chloe. I appreciate your energy and the invitation to be here today.
Well, I think we're going to have a great conversation, and I think people will take a lot away from this. And I want to start out with, let's just talk about the community right now. What do you see happening in the community? And can you talk a little bit about how your advocacy work works in tandem with this?
Sure. It's hard to start off with the negative, but I do think it is important for us to have a real conversation, right, about what's going on nationally, both at the and really across the country at the state level. But what we're seeing right now is the highest number of anti-LGBTQ plus bills that we've ever seen as a nation. There's a lot of extremism, I would describe it, going on as far as using LGBTQ rights as a platform in order to, I think, cause more division. So what that looks like is we're seeing bills that are making sweeping attacks on LGBTQ plus healthcare, denial of rights and denial of access to gender affirming care. And we're just really seeing that our rights are being politicized as well as our access to healthcare. I think that although that is very true and something that is a target of the movement at this time, on the other hand, we are also seeing some states put into policy, codify things that are creating protections for LGBTQ folks, which we have not seen in the past. I would assume that most, if not all, folks who are listening to us today are familiar with the Equality Act, which is that aspirational piece of federal legislation that would really codify equal rights for LGBTQ people across a number of domains. But what we're seeing and what we most often see are these battles, these arguments happening at the state level, where there is often more movement than at the federal level. So what I'm seeing in the community is people reacting and communities reacting to these. There are people who are moving from states where they're not feeling safe, where parents aren't feeling safe in protecting and caring for their children, where people don't feel that they can access healthcare or even safely engage in conversations or ask questions about supporting members of their family. It's really a pretty scary time. I would say, trying to balance the two and not sound too negative, is we're also seeing advocacy groups, professional organizations, community members, community organizations come together to combat that. And we're seeing a little bit more kind of cohesion and connectedness amongst the community as a result of these extreme policies that are being put out.
Yeah. Oh, please.
I was going to say the second part of your question, my advocacy work. So as you'd mentioned, I currently serve as the president of GLMA, Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ+ Equality. GLMA is a really unique organization, and I say that in a very loving and positive way. When I actually found out about GLMA, I was a graduate student at PAU. I was double enrolled at the program at George Washington University, specifically focused on LGBTQ+ health. And the president at that time came in and gave a talk, and she described GLMA as a small but mighty organization. And that has been in the back of my mind for the last decade or however long ago that was. That was actually my introduction to the organization and later led to me applying to be on the board and in my current position. So GLMA is unique in that we're small but mighty, and we're a multidisciplinary health professional organization. So we are the organization where folks, regardless of discipline, background, professional training, or professional or personal interest, can come and become a member to support the work that we're doing. GLMA's work really focuses across three different areas, or three distinct areas, and that would be advocacy, education, and research. I'm going to do education and research first because advocacy is the main bucket for us today. So the education piece, we had just last year our 40th annual conference on LGBTQ+ health. It was our first one in person since the pandemic, and we actually held that in San Francisco, right where GLMA was founded. And we also have a number of other educational efforts to support and further the development of the field of LGBTQ+ health. Our main research arm is the Lesbian Health Fund, which is the only known entity around the world that has funding specifically for research for LGBTQ+ women and girls. Truly a very unique aspect of GLMA. Now, the advocacy work. So GLMA really is, at the national level, the voice of LGBTQ health professionals. So we, again, have folks from all different disciplines who come and join our organization, either on the board, at the committee level, or the member level, and help us bring in their expertise and even talking about their lived experiences and informing our advocacy efforts. GLMA is really about coalition and building movement with partners. And so I think that our work really right now is focused on these attacks that we're seeing from the legislative bodies across the country.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's really important to lay out the reality of the situation because not everybody's aware of what's going on. And I see it really impacting the trans community, which I'm a part of specifically. And people just aren't aware. And there's a lot of, well, that could never happen. Well, it is happening. Currently, these laws have been passed, legislation has happened. And similar to you, what I see and what gives me hope is that the community is always like, no way, nope, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to keep fighting. We know that there's vulnerable people right now in certain geographic areas. Let's help them. We're doing crowdfunding. We're doing direct mutual aid, those types of things. So that always helps give me some hope. And we talk a lot about being visible in the community and what that means. And of course, some people aren't ready for that right now. And that's certainly understandable. And we don't want to rush everybody. I think people need to take their time and everybody has an individual journey of their own. One of the things that happened for me was when I was first coming out, I wrote a letter to an author whose book was the first time I understood that it was okay for other people to be trans. Not me, but other people. Okay, I understand this as a concept. And I sent her this email and she wrote back to me within an hour, which was amazing. Whoa. And part of what she said was, I hope your day is filled with love and light. And she said, part of your job now is to do for other people whatever it is you feel I've done for you. And that's why I chose to be visible. That's why I let a documentary crew follow me around for about 5 months into some really interesting, sometimes awkward situations. If you listen in, you can listen to me go on a first date, a blind date. Super interesting. At least to me it was. So hopefully you find it the same way. But that visibility can be double-edged. And the more visible you are, the more prone you are to attacks and discrimination and those types of things. So first I'm going to ask, what does being visible mean to you? And how do you stay healthy mentally while being visible?
Those are great questions, Chloe. So for me, what being visible personally means is similar to what you said, being out and being proud. And I would even go as far as to say secure in my identity. Of course, that doesn't happen overnight. I'm almost 40, so that's definitely a work in progress and something that happened over time. But I come from a family system that has a lot of value around kind of like justice and doing what we believe is right. And so for me personally, being out once I came to understand who I am as a gay man really meant that I wanted to live out loud, so to speak, and be fully authentic in who I am in all of the environments that I am present in. And that doesn't necessarily mean being loud in all of those settings, but oftentimes it does. So it's just as an example, being a naval officer and active duty in the Navy, being a gay man, I think there's a lot of preconceived notions or assumptions that that would be a really difficult experience. And I actually have never had a negative experience as a member of the armed services. Granted, I work on the medical side within the Navy, but I've only been experienced support and acceptance from the folks that I've worked with. And my job is really supporting the ships in Pearl Harbor. So like I am a 6'3" gay person walking around the joint military Air Force Navy base on and off ships. And so it really is a unique experience, but one that I have felt very blessed to be supported in being out in those spaces. The other to your other point about the double-edged sword, I do think that it is important to acknowledge, right, that some spaces are not safe, and we don't want to make an overgeneralization that like everybody has to be out in all contexts all the time. We want folks to be safe, and we want folks to make those decisions because they're extremely personal decisions. And right, like we know that identity development, talking about PAU and coming from a program in psychology, identity development happens over time. And so we want folks to be both physically and mentally safe as they go through this process, but also have the personal autonomy to make decisions for themselves along that way. Now, the second part of your question about being mentally or staying mentally healthy. I always say this, but I will give it a caveat. I believe that my key to success is an adult bedtime. I go to bed at 8 p.m. by 8 p.m. I should say every single night. Maybe on the weekend I'll stay up till 9 p.m. And I know this sounds really silly, but having that routine and really prioritizing my self-care, and like to me, I'm a runner. I go running every day, and that's something I love, but I would not categorize that as my self-care, even though it does help me stay mentally healthy. I think actually the number one thing that we can do is really take care of our sleep. I'm a huge sleep guy. I love sleep. Everybody knows this that I work with. I need my dedicated sleep time. But I think that is the first step towards self-care that we can all do, right? And what we have, for the most part, a lot of autonomy over. Now, in regards to staying mentally healthy, I think from a more broader scope, from my perspective, I think it all comes down to community and connectedness. And that's going to look different for different people. But the more that we are able to build community, and right, similar to the topic of visibility, that's going to look different based on where we are, who's around us, and who we have access to. And then that connectedness, how we're developing those relationships, how we're developing ourselves within community, how we give and take, because that is a part of the interpersonal nature of connectedness. I think that is hugely important for LGBTQ plus folks, to know that there are others out there, to know that there are others who have same or similar shared lived experiences, and are able to connect, learn, and share about what their experience is like. I want to put one last plug. I think that one thing that we can do much better in our community is really listen to, reach out to, and learn from our elders. There's just so much wisdom and so much experience for the folks who went through things during a very different time, right? When the world was even less open or accepting for LGBTQ folks. And so I think that the more that we can include our elders in our community and our connectedness, the better that we will all be from a psychological or a mental health standpoint.
Oh, Nick, you're really speaking to my heart here. There is so much to be learned from the shoulders that we're standing on. And Yes, they are doing foundational. They've done foundational work. They went through such a health crisis and we lost so many of them. They're really a treasure that we need to make sure that we're taking care of. One of the things that I like to do to try to keep myself in a healthy mental space is to find joy in small places and make sure that I'm celebrating things that don't seem that big to other people, but to me, it's like, yeah, that's kind of great. Like my brother calls it BC, before Chloe. I didn't really celebrate anything. And now I'm like, it's Tuesday. All right. I mean, and Tuesday's a hard day to celebrate, but I do try. And we talk about visibility, and I always try to take pictures of things that bring me joy so I can remember like, oh yeah, this happened. So when I'm feeling like nobody cares about me, I look back through pictures of me with my friends and things like that. I'm like, oh yeah, people do show up. We talk about visibility in general, and my brother also keeps me in check. So I don't know how to say this without it sounding very LA, but I was very fortunate to be honored by the Dodgers at last year's Prime game, which was super cool. I met some amazing people. I was up on the scoreboard, and then I flew to New York City because I was on a billboard in Times Square. And my brother said, okay, your head will literally and figuratively never be bigger than it is right now. You get a day and then you're going to come back down. But I still have those moments of joy and try to celebrate those with people. And after that, I kind of realized, you know what? There's not really a way for me to not be visible anymore. I'm also 5'12". So when I walk into a place as well, people tend to notice. So talking about the LGBTQIA plus community in general, where do you think things will be going in, say, the next 3 to 5 years? I know there's a lot of variables and things can change very quickly, as we've seen, but what are your hopes in that space?
Chloe, thank you for sharing all of that. You are a celebrity, and we do know that. And I love that you shared that with the group that's listening to us today. My hopes, what I project. I think that if we learn anything from history, if we learn anything from our own history, things, not to sound too cliche or to be taking away from a message that we've heard before, but things are going to get better. I think that one of the things that I've learned the most recently in the community organizing work that I've been doing is that our community, like we come together and we separate in certain ways in different periods, but when things are hard or when people come for us, or systems, I should say, come for us, our community is extremely resilient and extremely strong, and we come from a history of connectedness, and we will be able to overcome the things that we're seeing today that we were talking about earlier. I have no doubt that over time, right, like the question was very focused on in the next few years, that we will see legislation, whether that be at the local, state, or federal level, that does put into effect the protections that we not only require, but deserve. I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us, right? And that's when these conversations, the work that GLMA does, the work that the APA does, the work that Palo Alto University does. I mean, I'll share, I went to Palo Alto University specifically because I wanted to work with Dr. Peter Goldblum, and I wanted to be a part of the Center for LGBTQ plus evidence-based applied research. We really love acronyms, don't we? But clear, the program there has been a pioneer in LGBTQ psychology and mental health. And anything we do professionally, like right, there's an advocacy component of that, because that is ingrained in our community, and something that we all learn, right, over time, especially as it relates to connecting to community. So I think that we are going to see major positive forward movement, right? Like it is going to be certainly a battle, but we are prepared for that. We have done that before. And I think that the more that we can build coalition, the more that we can educate and uplift our allies, the more they will uplift our community. And I think that we're going to see, I think we're going to see some really amazing stuff. I mean, just based on the sharing that you just did, like I am so amazed and thankful for the spotlight that members of our community have at the various levels, right? Like Times Square, that is so huge. I mean, when you mentioned the Dodgers, I knew about the Times Square, I didn't know the Dodgers, but I was like, it's amazing. Like your experience is amazing, and you represent so much of our community. So I'm thankful for the work that you do.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing that. And you touched on two things that I really want to make sure that we go back over. Was one of the things, when I was still trying to figure everything out, what am I going to do? I always heard it gets better, it gets better. And I was like, when? And then, the more I had to think about it, I realized that things do get better, but things may not get better in the ideal way that I had pictured them. And I needed to be open to ways of things working out a little bit differently than I had planned, but still in my favor. So being open to new opportunities and new ways of being was really important for me. And seeing somebody do the things that you want to do lets you know you can do it too. I was giving a talk once against the transgender military ban, and it was very loud outside venue outside of the federal building in my hometown of Rochester, New York. And after the speech, I stepped down and I'm shaking a little bit. It's very hot. It was very hot that day. And this woman comes up to me and she says, I want to thank you for being an inspiration to me and my family. And you love to hear that because it means you touch someone. And I'm also thinking, I'm like, oh, is there somebody else here with you? And this little girl, she's probably 6 or 7, comes running up to me with this huge smile on her face. And she says, I'm transgender too. It's a good thing it was hot that day so I could pass off as sweat because I had tears. But it let me know that the things that we do as visible people make an impact. And I am hoping that our allies see us being visible and take courage from our community to do more and to keep pushing. And I'm very thankful that we have people on our side to make sure that we have the rights that we deserve. So Nick, I want to thank you again for an amazing conversation. I always like chatting with you. Please check out Nick on LinkedIn. Please take a look at the PAU alumni page for other stuff that's coming up. And you can always reach out to me at alumnirelations@paloaltou.edu. If you have any thoughts, if you have any ideas, always open to those. Thanks so much for joining us, Nick. I appreciate you. And thank you to our audience for listening in. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chloe, and happy Pride.
Happy Pride!